As you can see, I'm not in my usual studio today. Israel is in a kind of partial lockdown due to the Iranian missile attacks, so everyone has to stay near their safe rooms and people aren't really going into the office. But I had the opportunity just the other day to appear on the Charlie Kirk Show, and Charlie asked me about the issue of U.S. aid to Israel, which is a sensitive topic to a lot of people, about the quantity of money that America provides to Israel in financial aid, military aid. We had a very interesting conversation. Have a look. We are right now nearing the end of a 10-year memorandum of understanding that was signed at the tail end of the Obama administration in September 2016, a military aid package to Israel. And that package, when you say like ending the aid, that package included a requirement that Israel shut down certain critical parts of its own weapons industry so that they could not make them themselves and would only be able to acquire them and buy them from the United States. So Israel did that. So those who say, just go ahead and shut down, just go ahead and end the aid, it's kind of not fair. It's almost like it's kind of a bait and switch. Wait a second. We have to shut down our military industry making certain weapons.
That's a good point.
We're just going to, so we can't cold turkey cut off the aid because Israel needs to have an opportunity to rebuild that part of its weapons industry that the Obama deal forced Israel to shut down. I want to drill down a bit further on the point that I made there, namely what Israel gives up in exchange for the aid that it receives from the United States. Shutting down part of our own munitions industry, as I mentioned there, also means that Israel cannot make any money back by selling what we would manufacture to other countries. Now, the memorandum of understanding also prohibits Israel from shopping around to buy certain comparable weapons from other countries other than the United States, which kind of ties Israel's hands as well. But beyond the issue of the Israeli weapons manufacturing, consider this. Aid to Israel really grew to significant numbers in 1979 when Israel surrendered the Sinai Peninsula, made a huge concession on its security to Egypt in order to sign a peace agreement that was brokered by President Jimmy Carter at the Camp David Accords. And then in 1999, President Clinton wanted Prime Minister Ehud Barak to make some far-reaching concessions to Yasser Arafat at the Camp David summit in 2000. And Clinton felt that he really needed to give Ehud Barak the support, the security support, and beef up the military aid to Israel so that Ehud Barak could sell the concessions on Israel's security to the Israeli people. And then again in 2007, President Bush renewed the memorandum of understanding and increased the aid to Israel, then dealing with Prime Minister Ehud Olmert at the Annapolis summit, trying to strengthen Olmert's ability to sell more concessions on the Palestinian issue to the Israeli people. And then most recently, as I mentioned, President Obama renewed the memorandum of understanding in September 2016. And this increase in aid to Israel at that time was a response to the fact that Israeli-U.S. relations were in a bit of a crisis because the Americans had signed the JCPOA, the nuclear deal with Iran that Israel was so opposed to. So as a way of reassuring Israel and beefing up their security concerns in response to the United States entering the Iran nuclear deal, the aid was increased again. So the point being that the reason that the aid from the United States to Israel is at the numbers that it's at is not because Israel has come hat in hand asking the United States for help. It's because the United States has repeatedly used aid as an inducement to get Israel to make concessions on our security. So what does ending aid mean? Does it mean no more concessions and no more arm twisting of the Israelis on these issues? Does it mean that we roll back the concessions that Israel's made in order to receive this aid along the way? You see, it's not so simple to draw down the aid. And then in the interview with Charlie, I went on to make another important point that is often lost in the shuffle of this discussion. Have a look. We have to put the aid into proper perspective. And it's something that's really missing from the whole conversation. If you look at a map of where the United States has military bases around the world, and this is available online, you'll see that there are American military bases in numerous Middle Eastern countries around Israel. Jordan has American bases in it. Saudi Arabia has American bases. There's other countries in the area that have American bases in them. What does it cost to operate those bases?
Billions.
You know where there's no U.S. base in Israel. And so the U.S. military aid, I'm not saying that's what its purpose is necessarily, But no one refers to the U.S. bases in Jordan as U.S. aid to Jordan. They're just called defense spending. But America doesn't need to have bases in Israel because Israel is a reliable ally. So when we take a look at the expenditures abroad, the aid to Israel is not that significant.
Now, let me add that these countries, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Syria, Iraq, these countries all have U.S. bases. And it's not only one base. Like, for example, Jordan has a major air base and then it has several other smaller training sites. But the U.S. also provides $1 billion in straight up aid to Jordan every year. And I don't know how much money is coming back into the American economy from Jordanian technology and Jordanian business relationships. And of course, Israel has extensive relationships with the United States in those areas, including in the research and development of the very weapon systems that Israel buys from the United States with the aid that it receives. So let's stop with the complaints about the levels of aid that Israel receives. Israel is a bargain. As I said in that clip with Charlie, the United States does not have bases in Israel because Israel is a reliable ally. What is the ideal America First foreign policy? America First foreign policy means that America wants to disengage from foreign entanglements. But that doesn't mean that America wants to surrender the world to bad actors like the Chinese Communist Party or the mullahs in Iran or the Russians. America wants to securely withdraw its personnel and its resources from other parts of the world that it doesn't need to be. So the ideal U.S. foreign policy is not the Jordan model where America is pouring billions of dollars into air bases and training bases and having personnel on the ground there. The ideal U.S. relationship is with Israel, where they don't have to have U.S. personnel. They don't have to have a U.S. base, and they can allow a reliable ally to take care of its own regional business, which is also in America's interest.
The final point I'll make, Charlie, is that the amount of money that the United States has poured into Ukraine, and I'm opposed to all of that. I'm with you. But the amount of money that the U.S. has poured into Ukraine since the start of that war is greater than the total amount of money that Israel has received in aid from the United States since the state of Israel was born in 1948.
That's right. That is true.
Bottom line, U.S. aid to Israel is a bargain. Now, I'm in favor of drawing it back. I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said a month ago that it's time for Israel to draw back this aid. We saw throughout this war how the fact that Israel depends on the U.S. for so much of its weaponry and receives so much aid from the U.S., that allowed the Biden administration to get involved in Israel's strategic and tactical decisions throughout this war that tied Israel's hands and made victory much more difficult in this war. It made the war drag out longer, and it was a liability for the state of Israel. So I'm in favor of drawing down the aid, but let's not fool ourselves. Aid to Israel is actually in America's best interest, and it's actually a bargain.